morning, everyone, and welcome back to another TCP in the Morning News Break. I am here with Dr. Leroy Hopkins, definitely a community treasure here in Lancaster City, to talk with us about a project that he has going on at the Stevens Greenland Cemetery. Dr. Hopkins, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm fine, and thank you for inviting me.
So, Dr. Hopkins, if you could you just share a little bit about yourself with our audience, just so that they could get to know you a little bit?
Well, I was born and raised in Lancaster, attended the schools here, went to Millersville, graduated in 1966 with a bachelor's degree in German and Russian, and then went on and got my PhD in Germanic languages and literature from Harvard. I lived in Germany for some time. And then when I came back in 1976, I worked at the Urban League, first as the Associate Director for Program and Planning, and then briefly as the Acting Executive Director when I was hired by Millersville to teach German. And I retired in May of 2015 and am a Professor Emeritus of Foreign Languages at Millersville.
Also, to be interviewing you for this morning's news break. All right, so the Stevens Greenland Cemetery. Can you tell us about that project?
Sure.
I know that there are a few Black African American cemeteries here in Lancaster, but can you tell us about this project in particular?
There are exactly two Black cemeteries in the city. One is at my church, Bethel AME, which is, of course, the intersection of North and Strawberry Streets. People of color have been buried there from 1817 to about 1905. The cemetery, of course, filled up. If you know Bethel at all, the cemetery plot is very small. It's about a third of an acre. Nevertheless, there's at least 300 people buried there. And so around 1906, a member of Bethel by the name of Edward Millen decided that there was time to start another cemetery. And there was some opposition to the idea of a Black cemetery within the city limits. But with the help of some downtown merchants and with the work of the board of the Greenwood Cemetery, land was purchased. It's 3.5 acres. It's almost at the foot of South Duke Street, about the 1200 or 1300 block. And in that cemetery, we know for a fact there are 850 persons of color buried. We got involved in this project. I was contacted by Judge Jeffrey Wright, who was the judge of Veterans Court. And typically each year, the Veterans Court conducts a ceremony honoring veterans. And it was decided that this year it would be Stevens Greenland, because Stevens Greenland has the most Black veterans probably in the county. There are 53 buried there. For example, my uncle is buried there. He was a Buffalo soldier and was involved in the action against Pancho Villa in between 1914 and 1918 on the Mexican border. But there are veterans there from the Civil War, the Indian Wars, Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, and the Korean conflict. And so it was appropriate that the cemetery be honored, or that the people buried there be honored. The cemetery had come into some sort of disrepair. The board that existed to manage it, the last member died almost a generation ago. The Conestoga Elks purchased the property, I think it was for $1, and have for the last 10 years maintained it, having fundraisers to cut the grass. 3 acres is no small amount of grass to cut, especially with tombstones. There are about 200 tombstones that are visible. But thanks to the efforts of the county government, For the last four Saturdays, we've had an average of 30 to 40 volunteers. These are officials from probation and parole, Lancaster police, the judges themselves, and in some cases, their children have come, and other members of the community. The first job was cleaning off the tombstones, straightening some of them because some had been vandalized. Some of them are going to be replaced. The Snyder's Funeral Home is going to be helping. The list of people who've come forward is amazing. I don't think I've ever seen a community project that elicited so much support. Benches have been bought. There's going to be 10 or 11 benches installed there. Dead trees were removed. Stumps were removed. There was a huge stump that must have weighed close to 800 pounds. And Lancaster police came and cut it into pieces, and it was transported away with the help of officials from Lancaster Township, because the cemetery is right on the border between Lancaster City and Lancaster Township. My connection there is my grandparents are buried there, and also my uncle, but some very important people from Lancaster, from Lancaster's Black community are buried there. Abram Polite, for example, Albert E. Wilson, and of course their descendants. We're hoping that anyone who knows for certain that they have ancestors buried there, they'll come out to the ceremony. It'll be on Memorial Day, May 31st, starting at 11 o'clock in the morning. And everyone is welcome. And we want to celebrate these heroes, men who went to fight for this country, even though the country didn't really want them. Wow. Which is one of the interesting notes about Blacks in the military. Every war that America has fought, Black men have fought in them. They were rejected at first, then praised for their bravery, and then 10 years later, they didn't do anything. And so it's important to remember these brave men.
Yeah. And to tell their stories and to continue to kind of share that information, that's where a lot of empowerment lies.
No, yeah. If anyone is interested in genealogy, you have to start at the cemetery, because that's where a lot of our history is. My grandparents, my grandmother died in 1934, my grandfather in 1938. Their son, who was the oldest, my mother was the 13th child in the family. And my uncle died in 1967. And as I said, he was in the 24th US Infantry, which was one of the Buffalo Soldier units. After the Civil War, the US colored troops that had served so bravely in the Civil War were combined into 4 Buffalo Soldier regiments. They think they got the name Buffalo Soldier from the Native Americans who saw them. They consider them as brave as the buffalo and had hair something like the buffalo. And 10th Cavalry, 9th Cavalry, 24th Infantry, 25th Infantry. And there's at least one person from 2 of those units, the 24th and 25th, buried at Stevens.
Tell us about who maintains the cemetery year-round.
Actually, it's the American Legion Post 34. My cousin, Gary Wilson, is in charge of the maintenance of the cemetery. Each year they have a fundraiser, and it raises enough money to have the grass mowed. That's where the beginning of maintenance. And when bigger things happen, there's a lot of trees around the cemetery, and with storms, the limbs are going to come down, trees will come down. And so it's been rather difficult. Thanks to this volunteer effort, a lot of that debris has been removed. One of the issues that we have to deal with is that people are dumping trash there because it seems unoccupied. And so it's sort of crime of convenience. But we want to keep an eye on that. One of the things we've talked about is that after the ceremony, what's going to happen to the cemetery? You can have fundraisers, but you need a constant care. You need something like a board. You need an endowment, and that's something we're going to. Those of us in the community are concerned about, because there are a lot of people in Lancaster who have relatives buried there. 850. We consider when the cemetery was started, there was less than 2,000 Black people in the whole county, and so over the last 115 years, to have close to 900 people buried there, that's quite a cross section of the county.
I wanted to ask, so the location of the cemetery, I envisioned you go down Duke Street and you pass like the Comcast and the Flex Steel place.
It's on the opposite side of the street from the Flex Steel. It's of course it doesn't really. It has an address. It's something like either 1200 or 1300. You're only about 100 yards from the Conestoga River. If you can envision the Conestoga River bending this way, right there is where the cemetery is.
Okay, all right.
If you're on your way to the county park, you go right past it.
Right. So in addition to what you guys are going to be doing over the next few weeks, how can community members help in the effort to maintain the cemetery?
Well, they can come out and help with the cleanup. Most of it has been accomplished already. But as I said, an endowment is necessary, and that means donations. If someone is willing to donate some money, because the veterans that are buried there, they're 53. The government provides $3 a year to maintain a veteran's tombstone. Well, $3 times 53 is $159. That won't do much.
Wow.
So there's a need to build up a good endowment. When the cemetery was started back in 1906, it had a endowment of about $20,000, which is a lot of money for 1906. For today, I don't know. I don't want to pull a number out of the hat, but it'd be nice to have a six-figure endowment because tombstones need to be maintained, and besides the grass cut, you need other things that need to occur.
Absolutely.
One of the important volunteers who's worked with us, he's a member of the African American Historical Society, Gordon Reed. Gordon has researched all of the burials there and has found over 850 individuals. And I don't know what he's going to do with the information. I assume he's going to write a book about it. But if anyone has a question about who's buried there, contact Gordon Reed.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. Well, Dr. Hopkins, as we wrap up this interview, I want to make sure that I thank you for joining us this morning, and thank you just for everything that you've done for the community, all your contributions and the work that you just continue to do.
Well, it's something I think has to be done. If you see a need and don't address that need, that's on you. And so I see things that have to be done. So I try to do what I can.
Awesome. That's a word. All right. So what time on Saturdays can people, or should people?
Between 9 and 12. It starts promptly at 9 o'clock. Some are there earlier, but during that period, between 9 and 12. We'll be there every Saturday except May 8th. That's Mother's Day, or the day before Mother's Day. They're going to take that weekend off. But as I said, a lot of work has been done already. But just come down and look at the tombstones. It looks like a new cemetery. You can actually read almost all of the tombstones. It's just amazing. Wonderful job has been done.
Wow. Awesome. 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 All right. Well, thank you for joining us this morning. If anybody would like to get in contact with you in regards to reaching out about the cemetery, is there an email or something where they can contact you?
Sure. lhopkins531@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me.
All right, guys, stay tuned for more TCP in the morning.